Because my computer does not have an HDMI plug. In fact, it doesn't have a regular USB plug, which in fact is why.
Or thank you. Okay, the Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle promotes the use of reason and science in the search for and commitment to living an ethical life that benefits all humanity. We believe that personal inquiry, responsibility, and accountability are the best bases for ethical decision-making. Our weekly forums seek to broaden our understanding of ethics and human nature, and our congregational community encourages us to share diverse opinions, friendship, and camaraderie. We welcome everyone to share our journey. So we're a community here, and we also live within many larger communities. So now we take time to share joys and concerns. Any joys or concerns? Yes.
Yes, hello. Claudia and I spent a nice 3.5 days down at Topsail Beach last Sunday through Wednesday, and the weather was absolutely fabulous. Couldn't have asked for better beach weather. It's, 78 or so, maybe 82, and it was spectacular. So had a great time.
Sounds great. Any other joys and concerns? Yes.
I'm a little bit of a political junkie, so I watched the Democratic convention most nights or most of it. And it was just so jubilant and so exuberant. And I need to remember that that was their convention. That's the thing. And it's still going to be a really tough slog, but it was just inspiring. And I read some commentary that really focused my mind on why, and that was because it was community over individual. And I loved that message.
Agree with you. Yeah. Judith.
Sorry, guys. Just along those lines, I watched it too, but I found the site that isn't our media site where it's just pundits telling you what people are already up there saying. So I watched without pundits so I could watch the whole thing. And it was just absolutely inspiring from start to finish. It was fun. It was community. It was everybody. And it was the most fun with substance thing I've watched in a long time. I could even stay up too late, surprisingly. So, but I wanted to say the one thing that one of my favorite lines was Hakeem Jeffries, who is, normally needs to be just very diplomatic and so on. And he said one of the things that I think is the funniest. He said, Trump is like that old boyfriend you just can't get rid of. He just keeps circling the block. And then Hakeem looked directly into the camera and he said, dude, we broke up with you 4 years ago for good reason.
That was great. Yeah.
I have one, not sort of joy, but a positive news and one sort of concern. The positive news is it seems like Dorothy's bestie, Narendra Modi, is mediating between Ukraine and Russia. And he first went to meet Putin. I don't know. They're not revealing what they talked about. Then went to Poland. Then now he is in Kiev. And once he was in Kiev, Putin announced that they were not going to bomb, fight, do anything until as long as Modi is there. And he took a lot of medical supplies. I mean, plane loads of medical supplies for them. So I don't know whether he's able to do it or not, but I think of all the international leaders, he's probably in the best position to do it because he hasn't fought with anyone, except for the Muslims, but they also like him. And my concern is in the in the DNC convention, that they did not allow a Palestinian politician to speak. That really bothered me. I can see the bloody Republicans doing that. But when Democrats did it, it really bothered me. I mean, that is not a good sign to me for a Democratic Party.
Yeah, Chris.
I just wanted to go on record as saying that I really love Gus. If you watch the convention, you know who I'm talking about. So go Gus.
Good.
Gus is the son of, I forget of the VPs,
Yeah.
the son. And during his father's talk, he started crying and he stood up and started saying, "That's my father. That's my father." And he has it's not disabilities. Yeah, learning disabilities. And that's what sort of gives him the personality that he has. And of course, instantly there were detractors who were making fun of him and all of that. So I just wanted to say that Gus has my full support, and I think he's a wonderful child.
Great.
Very quickly, I'm also having to change my opinions on tattoos because I don't like them, but all the young people have them, including Walsh's daughter or else the VP, either that or the first gentleman's daughter.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that I just got hired to do 3 more windows for Doherty's. They had talked about it earlier. I mean, when I first did first ones, it's the windows upstairs to block the view of the rooftop next door. So, but they finally got in touch with me and I'm working on it already.
My daughter was telling me how much she liked Doherty. She had been there for the first time. She didn't know those were, it was your glasswork there. So I told her. She was impressed. Anyone else? I have one joy. I spent a week in Maine, got back last Sunday late at night. Marge didn't go because she felt the trip was a little too taxing for her. It was a lot of time in airports and a lot of waiting, 15 hours of travel each way. So, but our 2 children were there and one of our grandchildren and my son's wife. We had a great time in Maine. The weather was outstanding. And we were right on a rented house, right on the water. And there was a guy whose number we could dial, and he would bring freshly caught lobster on his boat. He caught them himself right up to where we lived and gave them to us. Really enjoyed that. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
I have one more addendum to my beach trip that Mary, I thank you very much because Mary put us on to the Sea Vista hotel or whatever that is, a little hotel on Topsail Island. Fantastic, just looking directly right up at the ocean. I mean, it was magnificent. Just priceless. Highly recommend
Great.
Sea Vista.
Okay, if there are no more comments, joys, or concerns, it slips my mind who has opening words. Yes, all right. Very good. Fred?
Only got 2 or 3 pages for this, so. Willie Mae Thornton was born December 11th, 1926 in Montgomery, Alabama. She got noticed by Johnny Otis's band when she was singing in nightclubs in the late 1940s. Willie Mae, known as Big Mama Thornton, was 6 feet tall, not skinny, African-American woman. But in 1952, She recorded a song written specifically for her strong, gravelly voice by two young songwriters, Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, called Hound Dog. At the time, Hound Dog was slang for a man who lived off the generosity of a woman. The lyrics started with, "You ain't nothing but a hound dog, quit snooping round my door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you anymore." Thornton's Hound Dog was revolutionary. It sold well over 500,000 copies in the early 50s, but she unfortunately did not really benefit. She eventually got a check for about $500. Elvis Presley, one of several who covered the popular song, released his version in 1956. Elvis's version took off and was simultaneously #1 on the pop, country, and R&B charts for more than 10, pardon me, allergies, not COVID, 10 weeks in 56, and sold millions, helping launch Elvis as a star. Thornton never really had a breakthrough as a star. Throughout her life, she lived by her own rules, refusing to accept life on others' terms. She loved to wear, pardon me, suits and not dresses. She refused to sing songs in a sweet feminine voice, didn't suffer fools gladly, and had a fondness for strong drink. As a songwriter, she did benefit, however, from a big hit with Janis Joplin, who sang Thornton's Ball and Chain in 1968. Thornton was in a car accident in the mid-70s, died kind of young in 84 at the age of 57. Hound Dog has been recorded hundreds of times by numerous artists, including the likes of Pat Boone, Sammy Davis Jr., Conway Twitty, Jimi Hendrix, Van Morrison, John Lennon, Carl Perkins, Tiny Tim, and James Taylor and Eric Clapton, just to name a few. The music historians will note, however, that Thornton's 1952 version of Hound Dog, lacking the orchestration common at the time, was among the first pioneering examples of 12-bar blues guitar rock and roll. You can listen to it on a YouTube video if you so choose. It's a pretty cool song. But it could have been a country western song. Why did the cowboy get a dachshund? Well, he heard all his friends say, "Get along, little doggy." And with that, we're gone to the dogs. Thank you.
So as you can see, Maura is our speaker today. And I know we're all looking forward to what she has to tell us.
All right, good afternoon. So first of all, SPCA volunteer clothes this is different tennis shoes because the tennis shoes I wear to the shelter, I'm not going to wear out, but always long pants, t-shirts. And if you spend $10 as a volunteer, cat hair is my favorite accessory. On the back, SPCA volunteer. So I'm ready here. And although this says gone to the dogs, cats, rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, snakes, birds, and ferrets, that doesn't actually cover everything that's gone through there. There's been a chinchilla that's gone through there, occasionally gerbils and hamsters. The primary animals you will see there would be cats, dogs, rabbits, and guinea pigs. Rats fairly often. I have seen one snake come through. Animals like that usually get fostered simply because not that many people know how to take care of a snake or certain birds or ferrets. So that's where we start. Background of the Wake SPCA. In 1967, a woman whose name currently just escapes me entirely, died. And in her estate, she left $5,000 to the Wake County animal people. And the executors of her estate said, wow, that's really awesome. And they went looking for this organization and it did not exist. That's why Wake SPCA actually started, was because this woman left $5,000. So these 4 women who were philanthropically minded were the ones who finally got together and organized things. And in 1971, they had the grand opening of the Wake County SPCA. You'll see on the picture there, it's pretty ugly. It's actually now the admissions center, and it's concrete block that it's got like long kennels for the dogs and a cat room with what they call cat condos. It's really cat cages. I mean, the cats aren't generally just in one cage. It's like a double. They have a little hole so they can have different place for the litter than they have for their food and where they sleep. But it's still, the building is too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, and is one of the reasons that in 2003, the SPCA Curtis Dale Pet Adoption opened. And there's a couple of pictures there that shows you the front of it. The second picture there is the front doors. That's where, as a volunteer, I go. And if it's off hours, they're open to the public every day, Sunday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. But if you're doing a volunteer shift outside of those hours, I have programmed into my phone the animal care phone number, and I call them up and they let me in. And that is the case with all the volunteers. So SPCA has got a lot of programs, as you can see by this large list. Admission services, unlike a regular county shelter, they don't just take in lots of animals from the street. They are not a high intake shelter. And what this means is, because they're not a high intake shelter, they use euthanasia for animals who were too ill or sometimes old and ill, and occasionally have behavioral issues where they're unadoptable, and that takes an awful lot. It's one of the reasons that I can work there, because to volunteer at a regular animal shelter, I'm really impressed with people who do that. But those animals just stay at the Wake County Animal Shelter just a few weeks, and if they don't transfer them somewhere else, they're euthanized. And I could not volunteer there. I would be trying to adopt everything, and Fred would kill me, and this would just it wouldn't work. So their admission services, they work with different organizations and more than half of the state of North Carolina to pull in animals that would otherwise be euthanized. And sometimes it's because they're difficult animals, and sometimes it's just because these shelters are overflowing. Especially as a lot of COVID restrictions wound down, this has become a huge issue for all shelters, because there are a lot of people who decided they'd have a COVID puppy or a COVID kitten, and then they said, oh, I'm going back to work. I can't deal with this any longer. And a lot of these shelters, including us, have been pretty full. They also have a volunteer program. As probably you know, based on the shirt, I am one of the people in that volunteer program. They want you to work or volunteer at least 2 hours a month of your time, which is a lot less than most of the regular volunteers do. They have a foster program. The foster program deals with if you have kittens and puppies that are too young to be adopted, or if you have old animals that you want to have not be in the shelter for a while, or if you have animals that you need to have in a home so they can adjust a little bit better. That's what that sort of thing is for. They have spay neuter services. They have a spay neuter voucher program. If you get a spay neuter voucher, you're not going to their service. You're just getting a certain dollar amount off of the spay neuter at some of the local vets. It gets a little complicated with the spay neuter services, because for the simple reason, if I were a veterinarian and I had a job all day, every day, where all I did was an assembly line of spaying and neutering, I would probably get frustrated and leave after not too long. And they have turnover with that, because that's a tough thing. They do have the spay neuter services in addition to for the shelter, also for the general public, and they're a lot less expensive than any other way that you can do it. Is it as high as that? I actually don't know how the cost of the spay neuter, part of it depends upon what animal and what sex. Going from most expensive female dog, male dog, female cat, male cat. Simply because larger is more expensive, I guess, with anesthesia and so forth, and females are more expensive than males because, you know, you don't have to cut a male dog open. Wow, with that I did not know. They also they work with some of the things like catnip, which I think Christine may know about. Catnip, people have feral cats in different communities, and rather than some of these cats, they will bring in to get spayed and neutered and then released back. What's it? Trap, spay, neuter, release? TNR, trap, neuter, release. Okay, so they also have behavior services, which they've been sort of expanding upon. There are people who get dogs or cats and then they don't know how to deal with them because the dog or cat is not doing what they think the dog or cat should do. Most of the time, that's because the human doesn't really know the right thing to do yet. A lot of behavior services is about teaching humans. They have Animeals program. Animeals is really cool because everybody knows about Meals on Wheels. Animeals is a monthly program that coordinates with Meals on Wheels and brings to people bags of dogs and cat food and cans of dog and cat food so that people who are on a pretty fixed income with not a lot of money have a better chance to be able to keep their animals. And I think that's awesome. I will say that the food comes from donation. People donate food to that program. So if it's somebody who says, well, I really only want Fifi to eat such and such, well, Fifi is going to be out of luck because that is a donation program. SPCA also works on humane education, you know, teaching people things like, hey, don't just leave your dog tied up in the yard all day. That's not really a great thing. And they have some pet loss support, which I think is pretty awesome because if you don't have animals, you might not realize, you know, well, your cat died, big deal. Well, no, sometimes it is. I mean, I've had animals die and I've had a lot more grief from them than Great Uncle Sam. I didn't really know Great Uncle Sam, but people understand grief for Great Uncle Sam a little bit more. So that's overview of some of their programs. This is the little impact. Actually, I'm just going to steal this. It's easier. It's much bigger on the screen. So this is 2023. This is the impact report that I pulled from their website. 198,245 services and items for animals, almost 200 services for animals in 2023. We took over 2,000 pets from different North Carolina County shelters. We had just under 3,500 animal adoptions. We spayed and neutered over 5,000 animals. 172,661 pet meals. I just think this is amazing. And up in the right-hand corner, you'll notice the 15,510 volunteer hours, which apparently, according to their math, works out to about 7 full-time employees. And since they're chronically a little bit understaffed, this is not necessarily a bad thing. And then there's also the pets that get fostered, community cats, all this sort of thing. You'll notice in the bottom right corner, Charity Navigator. And I looked on Charity Navigator's site last night. I could not find them right now, but that may be because they haven't finished all their tax stuff because their tax year runs like July 1st to June 30th. So, but regardless, they are a 501(c) nonprofit. Sir. That is the 75,000, almost 76,000 fixes is they opened that Saving Lives Clinic program, which is the spay neuter clinic in 2009. And that many fixes there, they are getting at that it's probably about a little bit more than almost 510,000 births prevented that probably would have needed shelter services. So again, this is something where you put this money in at the front end and long term, it's a savings. Just a few more little numbers. We talk about rehoming requests, some of the challenges of 2023, you know, housing and insecurity, financial insecurity, all those things add up and are part of the reason that people give up animals. And also various different things. You'll see rehoming requests for found kittens and cats, behavior and training, housing obstacle, lifestyle changes, family medical, family financial hardship. Occasionally I'll see so-and-so came to the shelter when owner passed away. That's one of the ones I think is the saddest. But that's some of the impact that they have with the work that they do. When we move on to volunteer opportunities, as you can see, there's just a few things that people can volunteer for. Cat butlering, cat matchmaking, and I'm going to go through these later. Dog butlering, dog matchmaking, small pets butlering, general cleaning, event volunteer, administrative assistant, blah, 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 all the way to medical assistant. In other words, there are a lot of opportunities and they don't all have to involve being around the animals if that's not your thing. The little note there for administrative assistant, that actually is just shorthand for, hey, can you come help stuff these envelopes with thank yous for donations, that kind of thing. Friendship cafe attendant, that comes back to the Anna Meals program, which I still think is so very cool. It's fairly recent. Event volunteer, they do sometimes have community vaccination events, which was low charge, no charge vaccinations for things like rabies and that type of thing. So, oops, come back here. Feline butler. As a feline butler, you sign up for a couple hour shift and you come in and you do things like scoop litter boxes. Very sexy work, I tell you. You scoop litter boxes, you check on blankets, you make sure everything's clean. They have a special sort of a broom that you push that has rubber bristles on it so that you don't raise dust because, you know, cats are low to the ground, except when they're not. The other part of feline butlering is you get to do things like play with the cats. This particular cat is getting a lovely scritch. This cat in the box on the right-hand side, that's Grandin. She's since been adopted. These rooms have a lot of high spots like you see here on the left. Her box is open, which is why she's sticking her head out. Grandin in particular was a middle-aged cat who came from a hoarding situation in Johnson County. She actually was very, very friendly and social. I got to meet her when she was in the medical treatment room. So she was really not a hard adoption. There's a few others that are tougher adoptions because, let's face it, if you live in a small cage for years, it's going to be a little tough to adjust. And that's one of the things that they have to overcome. So, feline matchmaker. This particular slide is showing you a few things. One is that, of course, we have a lot of kittens. They tend to go first. People want kittens. We have to, as a feline matchmaker, you walk in and we all have name tags that we wear. They're just sticky name tags that say, you know, our names so that people will know we're actually supposed to be there and helping them. The cat rooms, when you walk into the SPCA, there's one cat room on one side that's just by itself, which was the picture we saw a minute ago. And it's a large room with cats in it. And then there's a hallway and you have a couple other largish rooms with cats in it. The kitten room has got what they call kitty condos, which is like either 2 or 3 little cage things that are connected for them. And they only come out one group at a time. If there's one kitten who lives by itself in there, comes out one at a time. If it's a bunch of them, they can come out on the floor at the same time and play, etc. And just as we hand sanitize between the different rooms, we hand sanitize between all the kitty condos because kittens, being young, do not have as high functioning an immune system. Pretty simple. So we also have a room for FIV cats, which I'll tell you about in a little bit, and a little tiny room. These 2 ladies over here with the heart are Salsa and Tango. They are 16. Salsa, the one yawning, did have diabetes. At the moment, she's in remission, so that's very cool. but they're just old gimpy ladies. And they are somebody whose owner passed away, and so we're still looking to adopt. So Cecily, who's up in that top thing and is a little bit hard to see because she's a dark gray cat. I put her picture in because when you do matchmaking, you have to remind people, don't bother cats too much if they have closed themselves up. You can approach them, but don't be trying to grab them out of their cubbies. And if you do, don't be surprised if you get smacked. I saw a woman get smacked the other day, and I really had very little sympathy for her. Stefan and Damon, that's Stefan down there sniffing the wall. They are another bonded pair, just like Salsa and Tango are. When we have bonded pairs, you can't get just one. You have to get two. You get a little bit of a discount for getting two, but that is so that if they're already obviously very happy together, they get to go home together. And down in the bottom right corner is Queenie. Queenie is 11, doesn't like other cats. Queenie was one of the cats who lived in one of our people's offices. In fact, Pam, who's a volunteer of directors, Queenie got moved there before Pam started in the position. So Pam arrived and Queenie said, well, I guess I'll share this with you. She has, however, been adopted. So she's actually, so even when they're not right in the public eye, they can be adopted. FIV cats. First of all, those cheeks are real. He came in, we think he's probably about 13. Earl came in, I think he came in from that same hoarding situation. And the medical staff was like, giving him a little bit of checkout, and they're wondering, is there something wrong with him? So they're like trying to check his cheeks, and he says, no, ma'am, you're not going to do that to me. And so when he went and got neutered at the age of like 13, yes, when he was asleep, they checked it out, and no, it's just enormous cheeks, because male cats who are neutered later do tend to get like bigger, puffier faces, but Earl is something else. So these cats, all these 5 cats, they're different ones, are all in our FIV cat room. FIV basically is the cat version of HIV. And it's basically, they have a immune system that's a little bit compromised, just like this sign says. The reason we have them in a room by themselves is so that people will know, hey, these are FIV cats. They can actually live with other cats just fine. It's not that easily transmissible. This is just so people will understand what's going on. Now, FELV cats, feline leukemia. French Fry is the sweetest boy. He's living in this huge big thing up at the front. And he is positive for feline leukemia. This is something that cats get vaccinations for, but you still cannot have a regular cat who does not have it live with one of these cats. For FIV, you've got to have a deep puncture wound. For feline leukemia, just normal grooming and using the same litter boxes, forget it. You don't take that chance, because they not only have an impaired immune system, they're also likely ultimately to get more things wrong with them as they go along, which in fact is why their adoption fee is waived. It is a no-cost adoption. I will say that they have found that adult cats who get feline leukemia, probably going to have, in general terms, an easier life with it than kittens, just because if you give a kitten something, again, they don't have a fully formed immune system. And they're just not going to live as long. So, but there's a lot of really good ones. And we had a period of time a few months ago when we had no kittens, and we shuffled things around. And a bunch of these feline leukemia cats, we put in a room across the hall from everybody else, and most of them got adopted. And the one who didn't, I was so upset, because Rita is awesome. And so she then lived where French Fry is living, and she has been adopted because she's awesome. So excited. He's really good too. I love them all. So the other thing as a matchmaker that you tell people about is foster care, because if they come to the shelter, not only are they not going to see the cats that are not out on the floor, they're not going to see cats who are being fostered. And they get fostered for various different reasons. Some of them get fostered because they're kittens and too little to be on the floor yet. Over there on the right is Allison and Emma. We think Allison's probably about 9, Emma's maybe 15. They're old ladies who are very happy together, and they're not real happy in the shelter. So they're being fostered, and it's entirely possible they'll be fostered their whole lives. That's the people who foster for the Wake SPCA are incredible people. And this beautiful girl you see staring at you with the white fur is Daphne. She's another FELV cat. Any of the feline leukemia cats, other than one that might be in the front, they're going to be fostered because we don't want them too close to these other cats. But they do sometimes get homes. They generally do. It takes a little while. So, working cats. I'm just going to read what this says, especially if, is there anybody on Zoom? Especially on Zoom, you probably can't see this. What I did was I just copied and pasted the text from the website. At the SPCA, we know that just like people, cats come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and personalities. While many are suited to a traditional indoor home, there are others who require different arrangements to be happy. We're not just talking about feral cats, so they are certainly included. We're talking about cats who may have troubles consistently using a litter box, too much energy to be content, being confined to the house. Some are social, others are not. They think you can find a home for everybody. So the cats to the left, oddly, the cat to the furthest left looks an awful lot like our cat Maddie, which is just bizarre to me. Those two cats, the one on the right who's closer, who also looks a little like Maddie, is Boris. He's 16. He is bonded with Jeffy, and she's about maybe 1. And they're both cats who are not interested in people. They would love to be barn cats. Generally speaking, they require that if you decide you want a working cat, that you either have to adopt 2 or have one already, because they don't want the cats just to be by themselves. Delilah there on the right, one of our veterinary medical technicians really wanted her to be like a regular adoptable cat. While it is true that Sabrina was able to get Delilah to be reasonably happy with her, we could not extend it to anybody else. So another working cat, even though she's not like in the cat enclosure. All 3 of those are currently actually being fostered, which is kind of nice. So what do canine butlers do? First of all, the dogs at the Wake SPCA, unlike the cats, are not in great big rooms together because that would be insane. They have bedrooms. The adoption center has these 4 pods. All the pods except one have 4 rooms. One pod has 5. I don't know why they did that. So each pod has an exercise yard, which is sort of the background of this picture here. And each bedroom is just a small bedroom, has beds and toys and that sort of thing. And they get a bunch of different times during the day out in the exercise yard, all of them. And they get playtime, etc., with people. So you have Luna there. Luna is a sweetheart, but she's got a lot of energy and she wants to be top dog. She, in fact, has been adopted and returned a couple of times now, which breaks my heart because she gets a little more stressed each time. Brahm, he came from another hoarding situation. He's about 10, total sweetheart. When he got here, he didn't have as much fur and he just looked all folded up and he has just blossomed. That's Elphaba in the middle. You'll meet her again in a little while, stretching. Then Luca. Luca is an old man. He's about maybe 9, 10. One of our vet techs is fostering him because she fell in love with him. So she says, well, he needs to be in home for a little while. And she has got, in fact, 3 cats and 2 dogs, and he's doing really well. And that's Gregory down there on the side. Gregory is pretty much probably sort of houndish. He's quite tall and leggy, and he was adopted and returned, but I don't blame the family because they had his age listed originally at about 2. He's probably about 8. It's a family with little children. If you've got little children, you're getting them their first dog. You don't want it to die inside of 2 years. That's just not cool. So at least, you know, they were honest. It was a reason I can deal with. And just because Canine butler, well, actually, we'll go back for a second. For canine butlers for dogs, when the volunteers come in, they go into each individual dog's room. You take the one dog and put it in the exercise yard. Then you go back into their little bedroom. And if you're really lucky, it's reasonably clean. If you're not, it's not clean, and you have to do some cleaning up of various messes, and you make sure that the water is good, etc. And then you go play with the dog for a little bit for a certain amount of time. Then you pop them back in and go around and do the whole thing again. That's the general gist of canine butlering, which I've not done in a while, to be honest. Puppy butlering. There's two types of accommodations for our puppies. The little guy who's asleep there and these other guys who are peering at us are in puppy tubs. There's 4 of those. Those are big, boxy areas. And let me tell you, these are some educated puppies, because I've been bringing them New York Times from one of my friends who, for puppy butlering, you have to shift the puppies out of whatever tub they're in, and then you've got to get rid of all that nasty stuff and clean it, etc. We do also have puppies who are too tall for the tubs. This little guy who has plastered himself to the door and then looks a little more normal on the other side is in one of the little puppy visit rooms. Because if they're too tall, they just hop over the edge. This is no good. Puppy chaos. It's a thing. One thing with puppies is I think they're incredibly cute, and I would absolutely never want one. They are so messy and disgusting, and they poop and they run through their poop, and then they want to jump on you, and I'm not about it. But the people who come to adopt are totally about it. They fly out the door. So, come back here. Canine matchmaker. Now, canine matchmaker, this is interesting. First of all, you go somewhere like some of these shelters and they'll say, this dog is a pit bull, this dog is part Labrador, this dog is a dachshund. Wake SPCA never, ever, ever, ever puts anything about breed on these dogs, because for one thing, we don't know. And we're certainly not going to go around doing genetic testing on all the hundreds and thousands of dogs that come through. Second of all, even if they are such and such a breed, as a lot of people know, you say, oh, I'm going to get a golden retriever because they're so good with kids. And I'm going to get this dog because it's so good with this. Just because they're supposed to be doesn't mean they will be. And they're still just a dog that you're trying to put some of your own expectations on. It doesn't work. So that's why we do not ever talk about dog breeds. Now, the reason this sign is up here for Penny, who, by the way, is now called Winnie. Penny is one of our heartworm dogs, and I'll talk about that a little bit when I get to the medical stuff. Heartworm treatment is not cheap. It's not fun for the dog, because basically the medication they're getting is sort of like chemo for humans. They're giving them really nasty stuff to kill these worms, and it makes the dog feel pretty bad. They have to be on antibiotics, they have to be on prednisone to help make their heart a little bit less inflamed after. So if somebody really loves a dog who's about to go through heartworm treatment, because it's a few months, or has started heartworm treatment, we have this foster to adopt program where the person basically has adopted the dog, but not officially, because that way this new owner doesn't have to pay for this. They're bringing the dog back. So Penny was just visiting because she was getting her last heartworm treatment. And that's the sort of sign that shows up. And as far as breeds go, none of these guys look like too much of a breed. Well, Otis on the right-hand side might, and he's a little bit wild, so. Small Pets Butler. Small Pets Butler, they deal with a lot. We are really fortunate at the Wake SPCA. There's a woman named Maura. She's a retired critical care nurse. She lives a 3-minute walk away. She walks over to the shelter, and every day she works like 6 hours as a volunteer looking after the guinea pigs, the rabbits. Guinea pigs and the rabbits are the most. We also have a fair amount of rats. We get other little things like hamsters, which I don't like because they're bitey, gerbils. And that woman knows more about rabbits than probably anybody who actually works there because she is incredible. And I will tell you also that the small pets are kind of like small dogs, puppies, and kittens. They fly out the door. So that's just a few of them. That's Norman there over in the bottom. He's actually relaxing. She has a little fence and he's relaxing because he knows he's going to get medicated soon. He has the sniffles and he's tired of the medicine. Okay, general cleaning. General cleaning is dishwashing, that sort of thing, but laundry is the biggest. On the left and on the right is just some pictures of towels and blankets. In the middle, you can see these piles of laundry. You cannot even imagine. I can't even imagine having seen the stack of laundry that stacks, lots and lots of stacks. We have a laundry room, and let me tell you, those laundry people, they are the heroes of the staff. So, meds administration. I did cat butlering, I did some dog butlering, I did cat matchmaking, but medical administration, one thing is that you don't necessarily have a guaranteed a long shift. I live less than a 5-minute drive away from this place, so I'm ideal to sign up for this sort of shift. Somebody lives in Johnson County, they're not going to go to a shift that might be an hour. So that's one of the reasons I do it. I come in, there's a binder, there's medicines, and we use those little things that look like print fry trays. Have the dog's name in. What I do is I take those bottles out, put them in the different dogs' French fry trays, double check them with the stuff in the book, and then they get wrapped up, usually in pill pocket. A few of them get things like cream cheese. Sometimes they just get squeezed cheese on top of the pill pockets. Luca, who's now at home with a foster, hot dog only. I mean, that was it. That's all he did. So do this sort of thing in the medical room, and then you roll the tray around to the different areas, and all the dog bedrooms are locked. You have to get a key, and for any dog that you don't know very well, or for some of the dogs that are a little bit difficult, you just sort of hold the tray in. Or for Shiloh, for example, I toss them to him because he likes that. The ones that I really know and really love, like a few of them, I go in and give them pets and everything because as a volunteer, I have time. So that's the primary thing medical meds administration does. The morning volunteer time is when spay and neuter for dogs, because when they spay and neuter, they do 2 days of post-op pain. So in the morning, the dogs get following 2 mornings, a little pill pocket with something. The evening, the pediatric drug is when the cats get theirs, and they get a little tiny syringe of meloxicam. And let me tell you, they're not impressed. It must taste bad. But that's the main thing a medical administration volunteer does. The volunteer position called medical assistant, you get to hang out a whole lot more in the medical treatment room. And this sweetheart over here is there's 2 sides. One side is what they call the sick side. The other side is what they call the treatment side. So he's on some antibiotics because he's got sniffles. These little guys are on the other side because they weren't gaining weight properly. So they get monitored and they get treated, which means they get fluids and stuff to make them hungry. And periodically we have people come in to get the puppies weighed, to get them more exciting vaccinations or deworming. We also do things like deal with ringworm and panleuk. Okay, so ringworm, it's not much fun for the cats because they're in this isolation room and we have to put on all this isolation garb, the whole gown, the gloves, the boots, just to even go in there. And when we test them for ringworm, we use a toothbrush on their hair. And then it gets, Fred will know all about how the cultures, that sort of thing grow up. And if it's positive, they immediately get lime sulfur dipped. So a time when a cat is getting ringworm dipped, it smells really bad in that room. Plus, for a while, a cat has white on it, looks yellow, which is freaky. Panleukemia, that one's a really, really ugly virus that has not got any kind of vaccine. There are a lot of shelters that won't even deal with panleuk. It's just sort of like, I guess, the cat version of parvo, if you've ever heard of parvo in dogs. I don't even do the panleuk stuff because for one thing, I don't want to deal with it. And for another thing, I'll be honest, the clothes you have to put on, once you put on that plastic gown and then the plastic booties and then the plastic gloves, even my calves sweat. So I try to avoid it. This is just a floor shot of Chin giving medication to a rabbit. And it starts with him so you can see his whole body. And then you can see that he's got a syringe that he's putting in the rabbit's mouth. That next shot that's a little blurry, the rabbit was kicking him, punching at him. So it wasn't afraid, which is good because rabbits are a little scary to medicate. He's just very carefully holding down, he's not pushing on the head. And then there he is finishing the medication. And there's the rabbit looking really peeved at the end. These rabbits have a lot more personality than I ever remembered. Medical treatment, there's all kinds of treatments we do. This boy up here had to have his left front leg removed. Mew down here had an eye removed. And Elphaba was the dog who was stretching earlier. She came in and she must have had some horrible, horrible, horrible ear infection. And she had shaken her ears so much that the ears were swollen because they were full of blood. And they had to like slice it and get it out and sew her up, which is why in that picture she's wearing a super cape. Now, periwinkle there in the middle, you'll see that little rectangular shaved spot. That is heartworm treatment. And I really need to ask more about it because I don't know why they do the rectangular shave spot, but I recognize it and I know what it is when I see it. So they do all kinds of different medical treatments. And believe it or not, they're not any more difficult to adopt if they're missing a limb or an eye than if they're not. In fact, there are people who come in and say, oh, I have to take that one because nobody will adopt it, which is not true, but that's okay. There are a lot of ethical challenges for the people who work there. For the adoption staff, you've got a lot of adoption conundrums. You might get somebody that you're like, this may not be the best home. I'm not 100% sure this is going to work. Do I deny them this adoption? Or do I put this animal in a home so I can put the next animal in a home? And there's a certain amount of that. And medical costs. This beautiful little kitten has got something called pectum excavatum. His rib cage is not right. It's a little bit folded in. And what this means is that his organs are being pushed. And the more he grows, the more it'll become that way. And he has a case that's pronounced enough that without surgery, he will definitely die. With surgery, he has about a 50-50 chance. However, it's really expensive and we have a lot of medical costs. That's one of the things we have to think about, and I wish we didn't. Another ethical challenge is challenging dogs. We have a dog named Bailey. I think they might still be trying to foster her right now. She is a large dog and she has what's called a strong prey drive, which is to say if something smaller than her runs, she's going to attack it. And she hates other dogs and she will attack immediately. And you've got the ethical question of, is it even ethical to adopt out a dog like this? Because they would make us responsible for maybe a small child being attacked ultimately. There's all kinds of things like that. So, but those are just a few. Plus it was a chance to give you the picture of this little guy because he's a sweetheart. And finally, is it worth it? Absolutely. The picture on the left, the 4 people in the front are the mother, the father, and the 2 teenage sons who adopted that dog sitting there. Her name is Champagne. She lived at the animal shelter for 800 days. Major stranger danger, not a small dog, very nervous about people she didn't know, especially men. They visited her 15 times in order to adopt her. And the reason there's so many people in the background is because the people who work there have gotten to know Champagne so well, and they were so sad and so excited all at once. And the picture to the right is Mary, one of our vet techs, and Capcon, who has since been adopted. She fostered him for a little while, and she would walk around with him like that just because he was cute. it's always nice to see the positive effects. And that's it.
All right. Wonderful information for us all. So we're a volunteer society. We survive on the basis of the contributions of our members, and the baskets are going around. And donate what you will, please. Okay, let's open things for questions. Who's
Give us your money and your questions at the same time. Hey, Todd, when you get a chance, also Stevie on this after that. Oh, there's a couple. All right.
Yeah, I am. This is timely for me because I'm starting the process of getting a dog. I bought a big fence and now I got to put that up and then I'm going to go dog hunting.
Wow.
I have two questions. One is on the darker side, how many animals, especially dogs, that are euthanized every year? And the other thing I wonder about is, like, I know the independent rescue, animal rescue in Durham, they do nothing but adoptions. And I have to wonder about the impact on the emotional part of the dog, the bond that they make with a owner. They lose that when they go to the shelter. Then they're put out for adoption. They lose that when somebody wants that dog. Doesn't it have some impact on the animals?
It does. I'm going to answer your question in order. The first question is, I don't actually know the statistics on how many animals get euthanized. One of the reasons I chose Wake SPCA is because, not being a high intake center, and also because they have really good fundraisers, they keep dogs most of the time and cats until they are adopted. Like I just said, Champagne, 800 days. So that part I just don't know. As far as the impact on dogs of going from a home to a shelter to a new home, and on cats both, there definitely is. And one of the things actually that we do as the medical team, no matter how nice you try to make it, and the Wake SPCA, their adoption center is really nice. And the admission center is actually getting ready to, within the next couple of years, it'll disappear because they're expanding that one campus, it'll be much nicer for all of the animals, but it's still a shelter. And in fact, we have FAS, fear and anxiety syndrome. That's really common among shelters. There is a group called Fear-Free Shelters. And in fact, during COVID, when I was not able to volunteer at the shelter because they were only, for a while, only having people who worked there, and then eventually just volunteers. And, they let us take training with this fear and anxiety, the Fear-Free. So we learned a little bit more about ways to help animals. And one of the ways is behavioral. You will never, ever see anybody at the Wake SPCA yell at or smack a dog or a cat or any other animal, because it's counterproductive. It does not work. In spite of the fact that I have certainly yelled at my cat, it doesn't do any good. He just thinks I'm being mean. And it breaks down bonds instead of adding to them. So it's all positive reinforcement. The other thing they use is medication, better living through chemistry. They use gabapentin, which I think is kind of funny. Gabapentin, of course, originally was for epilepsy, and then they realized gabapentin was really good for different kinds of neuropathic pain. If you have nerve issues, I've taken gabapentin before, and it made me very sleepy. It makes me a lot more sleepy than it makes the dogs and cats who take it. I will tell you that. And some of these dogs also get put on antidepressants for some of this anxiety. Prozac works for anxiety as well as depression. We have a couple of dogs who are on Prozac because long-termers. And we had one dog come in who sort of a larger dog, big black fluffy dog, very sweet, but very, very anxious and nervous. And they had her on a couple of drugs and she just kept being anxious and they switched her over to just the gabapentin and Prozac. And I'm sure she still doesn't love being in a shelter, but she does not have the level of anxiety that she had. So yeah, there's an impact and we do the best we can. I answered your question at least a little bit.
These aren't questions, these are comments, I suppose. And I'll start with, I work for Safe Haven, which Maura knows. Essentially, it's all cats. It is a no-kill shelter. We too take things from Wake SPCA when they get overfull and they're looking to offload some stuff so they don't have to euthanize.
Wait, are you, no, you take them from Wake County Animal Shelter.
Wait, yes, I'm sorry.
That's
Wake
different than
County Animal
SPCA.
Shelter. So, both of us are
In the
So-
business of saving lives.
some cases doing overflow, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comment, as you say, people want kittens, and one of the things we've been doing with the feline Luke, the FELVs lately, is to say to people like me, okay, so if you get a kitten, that's 25 years worth of care. If you take care of a cat well, it will live 25 years. And to encourage people who are older, maybe they want an FLV cat. The feline Luke cats will live about 2 years. And quite honestly, if I'm going to go into Springmore, another nursing home, that's the time left I have to look after a cat. And then it doesn't, I don't die and this poor animal is left for me having to find a home. The other thing that Safe Haven is doing at this point is, because they're expensive cats, because as you say, their immune system is down, which means they get everything.
Yep.
They will pay the medical costs. If you agree to take a feline leukemia cat, they will pay the medical costs for the lifetime of the cat if you keep it, which I think is a really nice thing.
That's very impressive. And I actually have to mention my cats and Fred's cats, who you have seen pictures of before, just because they came from Safe Haven for Cats because we didn't know we lived 2 miles from the Wake County SPCA.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've watched with some interest is that it used to be that if you wanted to get the cats on your property that were bonded to property and not bonded to a house, spayed and neutered, there were spay and neuter programs, and there still are. I'm not saying they've gone away, but the problem is that within the city of Raleigh, for example, there is a leash law. And if it gets off your property, then the animal control catcher can come and take it because technically it's supposed to be leashed. And that, I think people want to do good things, but there have been several instances in Raleigh where people have taken it to be spayed and neutered, and the neighbors have gotten rid of it in one way or another. So if you get into that, be sure that the cat has enough room to roam, that it's staying on your property, because the neighbors have the right to have it taken away, and that's been a problem.
Yeah, we actually had some years ago, one of our cats roamed a little too far and he got stuck on the wrong side of Lake Wheeler Road because he zoomed out during a storm in October and he got lost for 8.5 days. And we papered everything with 400 flyers. TriangleLostPets.org, which is, by the way, an awesome resource. But Finn did get picked up by the animal control. In fact, they called us to tell us that they had him, and we said, we'll come get him. They said, we don't open till 1. Yeah. Yeah. Stevie, what's up?
Oh, when we had cats and dogs, animals, there was, senior blood work is very expensive. Oh, am I not on? Hello. It's about the cost of senior blood work for the cats, because I always felt terribly guilty because we had stopped paying after a while because at the time we thought it was crazy expensive, but I always think that that would have made our animals live longer. Do you do that? Do they do that in the animal shelter for the older animals? Do they pay the price to get the senior blood work?
Yeah, they do medical care for all the animals that come through there. And I don't know how much complete blood work they do unless there is an obvious issue. I'm not actually certain that they answer that question, so I have to find out. Tomorrow I'm going in there in the morning, so I may ask because I don't know. I mean, I know they do some because for one thing, the first thing they do before these cats get released into any room is a thing called a SNAP test, which is for FIV and FELV. But also we have various diabetic cats that come through, and so they're getting, well, that's just the diabetic sort of blood work. It's very specific. But mostly they're probably not getting blood work like that unless there's some sort of illness or something going on, simply because there are so many cats that go through there.
Yeah, I was just going to respond to one thing. We actually fenced
Fred,
off.
hold the mic closer.
Sorry.
Hold the
Ah.
mic closer.
We actually fenced off a part of our backyard with a cat-proof fence. So they have about a quarter acre to run around in and has a garden. And because the city will charge us a rather exorbitant fee if they happen to pick up one of our animals again. So they give you a warning the first time, but then it's trouble.
Oh, they charged us
Um,
$50 the first time,
Yeah, but next time
but
it
the next
was
time they said it was going to be
like
100 and we said,
hundreds. So the question I had was the professional staff, veterinary medicine professionals, the building upkeep and maintenance is all not cheap. So how is all that continuously supported?
that is continuously supported because in addition to having animal care staff, and the animal care staff are the people who come in every day, different shifts, and look after the animals. Basic stuff. I mean, it's not entirely basic, but that's in a nutshell what they do. We have animal care staff who are frontline to the public. We have the adoption staff who are frontline to the public, and they're the ones who interact with people who are potentially interested in adopting and try to funnel them in the best possible way. And we also have the medical team. And we also have a whole back office of lots of different kinds of people. There's a woman who is the director of volunteer services. She coordinates all of these volunteer opportunities and how everything works. And it gets complicated because we also have volunteer programs with children. Well, not children so much as teenagers, but and in addition to that, we have a person who deals with a lot of social media. She does things on Facebook and Instagram and other things to get information out there. And we have fundraisers, and we have a CEO, and we have a CFO. We have all those things. And the reason we do is because those people are help making sure that we bring in enough money to take care of all these animals and also to give our animal care specialists and our adoption staff a living wage. If you go onto the Wake County site right now, the SBA Wake County, if there's an animal care position open, it shows what the requirements are, and it starts at $16 an hour, and they pay 90% of your health insurance. You have benefits. $16 an hour is not much, but it's a starting wage. And this is a starting wage for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience or other ways to have a job. And it's a full-time job with benefits. Well, we have a lot of vet techs come through, but the ones who doing vet techs are usually in the medical treatment area, although sometimes also on the floor. And in fact, 2 of our vet techs are looking at going to vet school. And one of them, Chen, has done exotic animals, private practice, SPCA, large animals. He and Sabrina both graduated from NC State Animal Sciences. So, we got good people.
My question kind of follows on that. How much of your funding comes from the national SPCA organization?
None. First of all, there is worth noting that the ASPCA and the SPCA
Oh.
are two different organizations. Second of all of the SPCAs are independent organizations. We get no money from anybody but the people we raise it from.
Oh, well, that's good to know because I donate to a lot of animal organizations and some local in Chatham and elsewhere. And for years, I refused to donate to the Humane Society or the ASPCA because if you do, all you do is get crap in the mail and your
Absolutely.
money goes to big executive pay and the organization itself and not to the animals. So I'm pleased to know that your organization has nothing to do with them.
No, they absolutely don't. And that's a common misconception. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So I've always said that a dog will give you unconditional love as long as you feed it. But I bumped into this program on PBS where scientists were trying to determine whether it was food or love that motivated dogs. And they use an MRI to study the brain and responses to both of those.
Mhm.
And they found it was love. Now they only had 17 subjects, so I don't know whether they can generalize from a study that small, but that's very nice. It's very encouraging.
I think that I think it's a combination, just like with people. I think it's the other way around too. We love our animals because we feel like we're able to give them these things. And I know that Fred's mother definitely believes love is food. So the food versus love question is a little bit more entwined. But these animals that I come in and see, one of the reasons I had such a hard time taking pictures of some of these dogs, I really wanted to show you a picture of Banjo, who's since been adopted, because he's this huge 150-pound big black dog. But I couldn't get him to stop moving because he kept coming to me because he wanted love. So I can believe that. I think it has pretty good possibilities.
So, I have a question about the rats. The picture you showed certainly looked like a lab rat. Are these lab rats that are been
These are
brought?
not lab rats. They have white rats and brown rats, but they're definitely not lab rats. They're pet rats. I mean, and people have them. They don't live terribly long, but they're actually pretty darn smart, which I guess is one of the reasons they get used in labs. And I know more about them than I would have because I had a friend who had a couple of them. She had one who was a hooded rat. So his head was brown, his body was white. And another, that's basically called a hooded, and another white one. And I was like, I don't want to touch her. She's like, you're being stupid. Hold the rat. So, I mean, I held, and he was very sweet. I mean, they can learn to do things like some of them like snuggles, just like I've known cockatoos, big fluffy white birds, they want to be snuggled. In fact, unless you have a lot of time, don't get a cockatoo. They're like a 2-year-old. I think if we did not have a veterinarian on staff, that might be something to consider more, but as we have staff veterinarian and veterinarian medical assistants,
Right.
I think that's probably why they don't do that. And I mean, we get our drugs directly from wherever they order these things from.
Right.
So yeah, probably not.
One more question.
Usually, you don't have long enough to prove them, the healthy clause to get you insurances that it needs right. That's a good point. Sorry, I didn't expect this to be, I had to cut back my pictures too.
Okay. That's it.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well, thanks, Maura. All right, it's time for announcements. Do we have any announcements that anybody would like to make?
First announcement, next week, here again, but we're not going to have this set up. Todd, you don't have to do Zoom because we're doing an in-person meeting only, postcard writing. So people who want to write postcards can come write postcards. People who think that their handwriting is terrible can come cheer them on. Maybe Fred can bring a musical instrument. I don't know. So postcard writing and social hour. And I have bought a bunch of pins with some color. Anybody who thinks of it should bring pins with different colored ink. Gel pens work nicely. And I'm going to hand this to Chris.
Right after this meeting, the book group is going to discuss the book Trust right in that Columbia room. And whether you've read it or not, you're welcome to come in and join us. So 3:30 to possibly as late as 5.
I'm sorry to say I'm not going to host the happy hour this Wednesday. We've got company coming in towards the end of the week, and I got that last job to work on. But if someone else would like to host it, just, oh, Todd, yeah, and just call Doherty's, make reservation, and hopefully people will let you know if they're coming ahead of time. But yeah, so I'm just sorry I will miss it, guys, but please join Todd.
An email go out.
So if there are any particular folks who are going to be here, not in book club, but waiting for someone, let me know. There's a bar across the street and we could potentially arrange something.
Okay, any other announcements? Yes.
Just a reminder of Change for Change for supporting the New Hope Fire Department. This is the last day of this quarter. So next time we meet, it'll be a new organization. So just keep us in mind. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more announcements, I'd like to thank Jennifer for doing refreshments today, and Marge for being greeter today, Chris for monitoring Zoom, and it's time for closing words from Fred.
Right, I'll try to do this without wheezing our time. So the poem Power by Ralph Waldo Emerson serves as the preamble to Emerson's essay Self-Reliance, which was published in the first volume of his collective essays in 1841. So here is the poem, and then a short quote, slightly paraphrased by me, from that essay. Cast the bantling on the rocks, suckle him with the she-wolf's teat, wintered with the hawk and the fox, power and speed be hands and feet. And that's the poem. And you might get a little more understanding of what he's driving at when I give you the quote, which is next. This is a quote from his essay, Self-Reliance. Whoso would be a human must be a nonconformist. They who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Absolve you to yourself, and you shall have the suffrage of the world. So essentially, he's saying, you need to think for yourself. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, our meeting is over, but our fellowship continues. You greet the person next to you on either side and enjoy the refreshments.